What if the woman who quietly caught your attention was never meant to be just another beautiful face in your life? What if there was something about her smile, her presence, the way she looked at you, that your heart recognized before your mind could explain it? Because sometimes you don't fall in love with someone because you plan to. You fall because somehow in a world full of faces, your heart suddenly knows which one it wants to remember. There are moments in life that arrive without warning and stay with you forever. You can remember where you were, what you were wearing, what the weather felt like, even the smallest details of the moment when something inside you changed. You weren't searching for it, you weren't prepared for it, you weren't even expecting anything extraordinary to happen. And then suddenly there she was, a beautiful woman. Jane not beautiful only because of her face, although perhaps the first thing you noticed was her eyes, her smile, the way she carried herself. There was something deeper, something you couldn't immediately explain. Maybe it was the calmness in her presence. Maybe it was the warmth in her voice. Maybe it was the way she made an ordinary moment feel strangely unforgettable. And you found yourself asking a question you never expected to ask. Who is this woman? Ben Lienz. Who is this woman who walked into my life without knocking? Plans. Who is this woman who somehow became important before I even understood why? Banged. Who is this woman who made my heart feel something it had forgotten how to feel? A means. That's the mystery of genuine connection. It doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it whispers. Bleed. Sometimes you don't recognize it until hours later, when you're alone and her face suddenly appears in your mind for no reason. You try to focus on something else, but somehow your thoughts return to her. You remember a sentence she said. You remember the way she laughed. You remember the look in her eyes, and you realize something has changed. Man, you haven't known her long enough to understand her story, but somehow you already want to know it. Mandy, you want to know what makes her laugh. You want to know what makes her laugh when nobody else is watching. You want to know what keeps her awake at night. You want to know what dreams she secretly carries. You want to know what broke her heart before you ever met her. You want to know what she hopes for, what she fears, what she believes, and what kind of future she imagines when she closes her eyes. Jens, because when attraction becomes genuine curiosity, something deeper is beginning. You're no longer interested only in how she looks. Then you want to know who she is, and that is where real love begins. We live in a world that teaches us to notice appearances first. We're surrounded by perfect pictures, carefully chosen angles, edited lives, and people presenting the best version of themselves to the world. So it's easy to become fascinated by beauty while forgetting that beauty is only the introduction. Ma'am, the real story begins underneath it. A beautiful face may catch your attention. A beautiful character keeps it. Belene's a beautiful smile may make you look twice. A beautiful heart makes you stay. And perhaps that's what makes one woman different from all the others you've seen. It's not simply that she's beautiful, it's that her beauty feels connected to something deeper. Mons treats Kanzamai. Maybe she treats people kindly when there is nothing to gain. Maybe she listens without constantly checking her phone. Maybe she remembers little details that most people forget. Maybe she has a strength she doesn't advertise. Maybe she has survived things that would have made many people bitter, yet somehow she still chooses to be gentle. Fames, that kind of beauty is different. It doesn't disappear when the lights go off. It doesn't need an audience. It doesn't depend on compliments. It lives in character. And character is what you eventually fall in love with when the excitement settles and real life begins. And I once heard someone say that the first thing you notice about a person is usually what everyone else can see, but the reason you stay is what only your heart can understand. Think about that. Everyone can see her face. Everyone can notice her smile. Everyone can recognize that she's attractive. But only someone who takes the time to know her can discover what makes her extraordinary. Maybe she's the woman who checks on her family even when she's exhausted. Maybe she's the woman who quietly gives more than she receives. Maybe she's the woman who doesn't need attention to know her worth. Alanda. Maybe she's the woman who has learned how to stand alone but still knows how to love deeply. Maybe she isn't searching for someone to rescue her. Maybe she's simply waiting for someone who will respect the life she's already built. And perhaps that's why your heart is drawn to her, because something in you recognizes something in her, not perfection, recognition. You see a strength that reminds you of the strength you want to develop in yourself. Mans, you see kindness that reminds you what you've been missing. You see peace that makes you tired of chaos. Mandas, you see sincerity that makes superficial relationships suddenly feel empty. Well, that's when you begin to understand that attraction isn't always about wanting someone. Sometimes it's about recognizing someone, recognizing a soul that feels strangely familiar. Gubs, a presence that makes you wonder whether life knew exactly what it was doing when it allowed your paths to cross. And maybe you've spent years wondering why previous relationships didn't work. Maybe you blamed yourself. Jen, maybe you blamed them. Maybe you thought something was wrong with you because every connection eventually ended. Jelly and Mbengden, but what if some endings weren't failures? What if they were lessons? What if every relationship that didn't last taught you something about what you actually needed? Maybe one taught you the difference between attention and affection. Another taught you the difference between chemistry and compatibility. Another taught you that words mean nothing without actions. Another taught you that you should never have to beg someone to value your presence. And after all those lessons, you finally become capable of recognizing something different, not because this woman is perfect, Dom Jantz, but because you are finally mature enough to appreciate what truly matters. Benz, you don't look at her and think she will complete my life. Benz, you look at her and think I want to build something meaningful with her. Chins, that is a completely different kind of love. Because when you stop looking for someone to fill an emptiness inside you, you become free to love someone for who they actually are. Bands, you don't need her to save you. You don't need her to fix every wound. Domains, you don't need her to make every day exciting. You simply want her presence in the journey. Man, you want to hear her voice after a difficult day. You want to celebrate her victories. Ben, you want to protect her peace. You want to see her dreams become reality. And when life becomes difficult, you want to be the person who reminds her that she doesn't have to face it alone. That's when the question changes. You stop asking, who is this beautiful woman who won my heart? And you begin asking something much deeper. How did I become lucky enough to meet her? Yes, because some people enter your life and make you understand that love isn't about finding the most beautiful person in the room. It's about finding the person whose presence makes the room feel different when she walks into it. And once you've experienced that, you never look at love the same way again. You never look at love the same way again. Because now you understand that beauty isn't simply what your eyes see. It's what your heart continues to discover long after the first impression has faded. You begin to notice the things that nobody else notices. The way she becomes quiet when something is bothering her. The way her voice changes when she talks about something she truly cares about. The way she tries to be strong for everyone else. Even when she secretly needs someone to be strong for her. And suddenly her little imperfections become part of what makes her beautiful. Maybe she overthinks sometimes. Maybe she gets emotional. Maybe she worries too much. Maybe she needs reassurance on certain days. Ben's maybe she has walls around parts of her heart because life taught her to be careful. Ben, you don't look at those things and think she's difficult. You look at them and think she's human. That's a powerful difference, because loving someone doesn't mean loving an imaginary version of them. It means learning to love the person who actually stands in front of you. The woman with dreams and fears, the woman with confidence and insecurity, the woman who can be incredibly strong one day and need comfort the next. Real love isn't attracted only to someone's strengths. It has compassion for their struggles. I think that's something many people forget. We want someone who will understand us when we're struggling, but we sometimes forget that the person we love will struggle too. We want patience when we're tired, but we forget to give patience when they're tired. We want forgiveness when we make mistakes, but we sometimes keep a record of every mistake they have ever made. Jen, that's not love, that's accounting. Love doesn't keep score. Love remembers. It remembers the good. Lan, it remembers the effort. It remembers the difficult days you survived together. Fans, it remembers the times she stayed when walking away would have been easier. And when conflict comes, love asks, how do we solve this instead of how do I win? plan. That's the kind of relationship worth building, because eventually every beautiful beginning reaches an ordinary season. Men, the conversations become familiar, the routines become normal, the excitement becomes quieter, and this is where many relationships fail. They think the love disappeared because the adrenaline disappeared, but sometimes love isn't disappearing. Sometimes it's maturing. Man, the fireworks become a candle, the rush becomes peace, the uncertainty becomes trust, the attraction becomes companionship. And you realize that the woman who once made your heart race is now the woman who makes your heart rest. That is something special. The binds, there is a kind of peace that only comes from knowing someone deeply and still choosing them. Men, you know their flaws, they know yours, you've seen each other frustrated, you've seen each other exhausted. Man, you've seen each other disappointed, you've seen each other at your best and your worst. And somehow, after seeing all of that, you still look at each other and say, I'm here. That is not ordinary love, that is commitment. And commitment is one of the most beautiful forms of affection, because it says, my feelings matter, but so does my decision to protect what we've built. Blamst, the beautiful woman who won your heart may not always make you happy. Let's be honest. Bend, no human being can do that. There will be misunderstandings, there will be arguments. There will be days when both of you are too tired to communicate properly. Blains, there will be moments when you don't understand each other. Bind, but the right person won't make conflict the end of the relationship. She'll make conflict an opportunity to understand each other better, and you'll do the same for her. You won't use her vulnerability against her, you won't weaponize things she told you in confidence. Malenge, you won't punish her with silence just to make her suffer. Baint, you'll remember that the person you're arguing with is the same person you once prayed to meet. Means that thought alone can change an argument. Imagine being angry with someone and remembering, this is the woman I was once afraid I'd never find. And suddenly your ego becomes less important. You stop trying to prove you're right. And you start trying to protect the relationship. That's maturity, that's love. And if she truly won your heart, then you should want more for her than simply being loved by you. And you should want her to grow, you should want her to chase her dreams. Jans, you should want her to become everything she is capable of becoming. You shouldn't feel threatened by her success. Man, you should celebrate it. Her success isn't your failure. Her confidence doesn't diminish yours. Mains, her light doesn't make yours smaller. A healthy relationship doesn't create competition between two people. It creates partnership. Man, when she wins, you celebrate. When you win, she celebrates. When one falls, the other reaches down. Blend, when one is tired, the other carries a little more. That's how two people build something that can survive time. And maybe the reason this woman won your heart is because somewhere inside her, she has the qualities you didn't even know you were searching for. But maybe she gives you peace you didn't know you needed. Bends, maybe she challenges you in ways that make you stronger. Ba, maybe she makes you laugh when you were convinced you couldn't smile. And maybe she listens to stories you've told 100 times as if they're still worth hearing. Links, maybe she sees the man you could become when you're struggling to see him, because the right woman doesn't simply admire who you are, she can see who you're becoming. And sometimes that's exactly what a man needs, not someone who tells him he's perfect, someone who believes he can become better. Men, someone who can look him in the eyes and say, I know you're capable of more. Not with criticism, with faith. Leans, there's a difference between someone who judges you and someone who challenges you because they believe in you. Tembliance, one makes you feel small, the other makes you rise. And if you have found a woman like that, don't take her presence lightly. Baines, because there are people who will admire your success, but never understand your struggle. Blaine, there are people who will love your image, but never learn your heart. Men's, there are people who will want your attention, but never protect your peace. And then there are rare people who care about the person behind everything the world sees. Mainent, those are the people you protect. Those are the people you appreciate. Men, those are the people you don't keep waiting forever for words you should have already spoken. Tell her. Bent. Tell her what you admire, tell her what her presence means, tell her when she makes your life better. And don't assume she knows, don't wait for a special occasion. Love doesn't need a calendar. Lean, sometimes the most powerful sentence you can say is simply, I'm grateful that I met you. Lands. Because imagine how it feels to be told that your existence became someone's reason to believe in life again. Lan. Imagine knowing that your smile helped someone through a difficult season. Banged. Imagine hearing that your presence brought peace to a heart that had known too much chaos. Mbeg. That's the kind of love that leaves a permanent mark. And perhaps one day, years from now, you'll look back at the moment you first saw her and realize you had no idea what was beginning. And you thought you were meeting a beautiful woman. You didn't know you were meeting a future memory. Landa. You didn't know you were meeting the person whose laughter would become familiar. Lians. You didn't know her voice would become part of your everyday life. Jand. You didn't know her name would eventually be connected to some of your happiest memories. Mailndas. You didn't know that one day you would look across a crowded room, find her eyes, and feel the same quiet gratitude you felt when you first noticed her. And that's when you'll understand something beautiful. You didn't simply fall in love with her appearance. You fell in love with the life you discovered when you were beside her. And that is when love stops being a feeling and becomes a story. You fell in love with the life you discovered when you were beside her. And perhaps that is the greatest surprise of all. Allegiance. You thought she was going to become one beautiful chapter in your life, but somehow she became part of the reason you wanted to keep turning the pages. Then you started dreaming differently. You started thinking about the future differently. LNGU, you started caring about becoming a better man, not because someone demanded it from you, but because loving her made you want to become someone worthy of the trust she placed in your hands. Vance, that's what real love can do. It doesn't make you perfect, it makes you intentional. Mans, you begin to understand that every choice you make affects more than just yourself. Your words matter more. Your promises matter more. Your temper matters more. Your patience matters more. Because now there's someone whose heart can be touched by everything you do, and suddenly love becomes responsibility. Palurmdurin, not the kind that feels heavy, the kind that feels meaningful. You realize that being loved by someone is not merely a privilege. It's something you should honor. And if she trusts you with her fears, protect them. If she tells you about her dreams, encourage them. Promians, if she shows you her scars, don't use them as weapons. Lanzer, if she lets you see the parts of herself she hides from the world, treat that vulnerability like something sacred. Because trust is fragile, it takes months and years to build, but sometimes only one careless moment to destroy. And when you find someone who gives you genuine trust, don't make her regret giving it. There will be days when you don't feel romantic. There will be days when work consumes you. There will be days when stress makes you impatient. Lens, there will be days when you come home carrying frustrations that have nothing to do with her. Mlane, those are the days when love matters most. Because anyone can be loving when everything is easy. Character appears when everything is difficult. Maybe that's why the most beautiful relationships aren't the ones with the fewest problems. They're the ones where two people refuse to become enemies because of their problems. Finally, they remember that it's both of them against the problem, not one against the other. That simple mindset can save a relationship. When the bills are heavy, they face them together. Jean, when family problems arise, they support each other. When dreams take longer than expected, they encourage each other. Leaned, when one person's confidence disappears, the other lends them some. That's partnership. That's what it means when someone truly wins your heart. You don't just want her when she's smiling. Ben, you want to be there when she's crying. You don't just want her when she's confident. Banids, you want to hold her when she's uncertain. You don't just want her when she's successful. Man, you want to stand beside her while she's still becoming, because love isn't about loving the finished product. There's none of us are finished products. We're all becoming. Every year teaches us something. Every disappointment changes us. Donja's every experience leaves a mark, and the person you love today will continue evolving. Bandra, so don't fall in love with who she was yesterday. Keep discovering who she is becoming. Ask her questions. Listen to her changing dreams. Learn her new fears. Celebrate her new victories. Be curious about her. Sangde, because one of the saddest things that can happen in a long relationship is becoming so familiar with someone that you stop being interested in them. Mondian, never stop asking, never stop listening, never stop discovering. Mans, the woman who won your heart deserves to be known again and again. Jen's not because she's constantly changing into someone else, but because there are depths in every human being that cannot be discovered in a single lifetime. Gem NG. You can spend 50 years with someone and still find something new to admire, a new story from their childhood. Men's a forgotten dream, a memory they never told you, a fear they finally feel safe enough to share. Minj, a talent you never knew existed, a side of their personality that only appears when they feel completely comfortable. Land. That's the adventure of loving another human being. You don't reach the end, you keep discovering. And perhaps that is why the question, who is this beautiful woman who won my heart, doesn't really have one answer. She is the woman who made you believe again. Len, she is the woman who taught you that peace can be more powerful than excitement. Jam, she is the woman who reminded you that vulnerability isn't weakness. Malang, she is the woman who showed you that love can be both gentle and strong. Verban, she is the woman whose presence makes ordinary moments feel valuable. Man, she is the woman you want to tell your stories to. Belen, the woman you want beside you when something wonderful happens. Men, the woman you instinctively look for when you enter a room. Benst, the woman whose happiness matters to you even when nobody is watching. And perhaps most importantly, she is the woman who makes you understand that love isn't something you simply find. Leaned, it's something you build. Every morning you build it, every conversation builds it, every apology builds it. Lammed, every act of kindness builds it. Every time you choose patience instead of anger, you build it. Lend, every time you keep a promise, you build it. Every time you choose honesty when lying would be easier, you build it. Laned, that's how a beautiful beginning becomes a beautiful life. Jen, so if you're lucky enough to have a woman like that in your life, don't just admire her. And appreciate her. Don't just say she's beautiful. Tell her why her character is beautiful. Bane, tell her what her kindness has meant to you. Tell her that her strength inspires you. Mans, tell her that you notice the sacrifices nobody else sees. Mans, tell her that you are grateful for the way she has changed your life. Len, because someday, years from now, the details of your first meeting may become blurry. Halban, you may forget what she was wearing, you may forget exactly what she said. Telengens, you may forget where you were standing, but you will remember how she made you feel. And more importantly, you will remember who you became because you loved her. That's the legacy of real love. It's not simply that someone made you happy, okay, but that someone made you better. Someone made you more patient, more courageous, more generous, more honest, more hopeful, more alive. And when you look back at your life, you realize that perhaps the greatest blessing wasn't that she won your heart. Len, it was that she helped you discover what your heart was capable of giving. So who is this beautiful woman who won your heart? She is not just a face you can't forget. Belian, she is not just a smile that caught your attention. Mon, she is not just a name that makes your heart beat differently. She is a human being with a story. Bane, a story you may never fully understand. A heart you may never completely map. Maindy, a soul you have the privilege of discovering one day at a time. And if she chooses to walk beside you, don't promise her a perfect life. Promise her something more valuable. Tamjian, promise that you'll be honest. Promise that you'll listen. Promise that you'll grow. Benda promises that when life gets difficult, you'll remember why you chose each other. Lenged, promise that you'll never make her feel alone while standing beside you. And when the years pass, when youth begins to fade and life has written its story across both of your faces, I hope you still look at her with that same sense of wonder. Mians, I hope you still ask yourself, almost in disbelief, who is this beautiful woman who won my heart? And then I hope you realize the answer was never only about her beauty. Men's, it was about everything she brought into your life. The peace that laughed to your life. The pierce, the laughter, the courage, the memories, the growth. Tainted the love. And if you are truly blessed, you'll look into her eyes one day and understand that the woman who once caught your attention became the woman who captured your heart. And the woman who captured your heart became the woman who helped you understand what it means to come home to another human being. Jen, so don't take her for granted. Don't wait until she's gone to understand her value. Men, don't let pride stop you from saying what your heart already knows. If she's special, tell her. Then if she matters, show her. And Bennett, if you love her, choose her, not just when the world is beautiful, but when the world becomes difficult. Ben, because the rarest love isn't the love that begins with a perfect moment. And Blian, it's the love that survives imperfect moments. And perhaps one day when someone asks you who that beautiful woman is, you won't need a complicated answer. Mans, you'll simply smile, you'll look at her, and you'll say, that's the woman who walked into my life and made me believe that sometimes the most beautiful thing in the world isn't finding someone who takes your breath away. It's finding someone who gives you a reason to breathe more deeply, love more honestly, dream more boldly, and live more completely. And then you'll understand why your heart noticed her before your mind could explain it. Because sometimes, your heart recognizes home before you even know you're looking for it.